Propaganda is not education. All right, guys, once I start playing this, because as I've told you before, I don't have a monitor, a separate monitor, so I'm just using my laptop. Let me know that you can hear it. Bill don't even like her ass. True.
What I'm about to talk to you about happened before October 7th. I'm going to talk about radicalism on college campuses. Sort of radicalism that has mainstream students.
Oh my gosh.
Getting propaganda, whether it's from their professors or whether it's from communist Chinese government through TikTok, calling the president of the United States.
Oh my God.
Genocide Joe.
I hope you guys,
calling you.
Again, I hope you guys don't mind as I'm doing this, that I pause a lot, because I know that sometimes that can be annoying or whatever, but like we have to pause because we have to make fun of this. They are such boomers. They are such boomers. Oh, college campuses were already getting radicalized by Chinese propaganda through tic-tac-toe. Oh my gosh. It is so, I know, 5 seconds in already, bingo, October 7th. Oh, which by the way, I forgot to tell you guys, sorry, before we got into this, to join my Discord. I put my Discord in the community tab of my YouTube, because we were talking about the other day that we were going to make a Hasbara bingo card, which we haven't started working on, but I just created Discord, so join it if you haven't. Hello, Ilias Faracco. Yeah, okay, so embarrassing. You know what this reminds me of? You know what I actually specifically about Morning Blow and all these other elites that are in DC and New York in the media is that they fancy themselves truth tellers, right? They fancy themselves truth tellers. They fancy themselves as the type of people that would have marched with Martin Luther King, that would have supported the sit-ins, the lunch counter sit-ins. They would have opposed South Africa's apartheid and blah, 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 blah. That's how they view themselves. Guardians of democracy. But they're not. They literally sound exactly like the people in the 60s and in the 80s. They sound exactly like the white moderates in the 60s and in the 80s that would say, okay, sure, maybe people should be so racist and we don't like the KKK, but like, can't they protest in a better way? Can't Black people like not disrupt traffic on the bridge? You shouldn't just go sit at a lunch counter. There are better ways to protest. Why are these college kids protesting South Africa's apartheid? Radicals. Why are they so radical? It's literally that. People said the exact same thing about the civil rights movement and about the South Africa apartheid protests. They said the exact same thing. And now we are in 2024, and these elites, these DC brain worm fucking elites, are the same people that would say those things, but they see themselves as progressive now. They see themselves as progressives who stand up for democracy and care about the truth and being on the right side of history, you know? They're on the right side of history, but they're not on the right side of history. They're not, because they are the same people that would have sided with the segregationists, or at the very least, the moderates that didn't want to do anything in the 60s. And they're the same people that would have cried and whined about Hamilton Hall being occupied, which it was in the 80s during South Africa's apartheid. So that's them. The most insufferable part of it, though, is that they don't see themselves that way. They don't think that they're those people. They don't think that they're the fucking boomers who are the ones getting in the way of progress. So that's them. Okay. And then he's like, the Communist Party through TikTok. Get out of here. This is so embarrassing. So embarrassing. And by the way, yeah, I also love this too. We need to talk about propaganda. Yeah, you would know a thing or two about propaganda, wouldn't you? Because that's all our media does, is spew propaganda. And another question I would like for them to answer, okay? Why are they talking about the dangers of foreign propaganda getting into our colleges? And they are so concerned about foreign propaganda getting to the youths. But none of them have a problem with a foreign government, Israel, spreading massive amounts of propaganda through every single media outlet that we have. None of them. We're so concerned about foreign governments and foreign interference in our elections, right? So concerned. But they have no problem with a foreign government in Israel spreading propaganda and influencing our elections by buying our politicians and running out politicians that they don't like through AIPAC. Okay? So just I bring that up. I know you guys know that, but I bring that up to say you should disregard everything they say about other countries and their faux concern about American national security. They're so concerned about America's national security. No, they're not. It is just about what propaganda they want disseminated. They want you to be brainwashed. It's just about who you get brainwashed by. Do you get brainwashed by the Chinese Communist Party? Do you get brainwashed by Israeli propaganda and American U.S. corporate propaganda? So just remember that anytime you hear any of these jackals talking about Russia or talking about Syria or talking about China, remember that. Remember that. Okay. Yeah, it's totally insane. Okay, so Gate, totally insufferable, embarrassing.
And President Clinton, war criminals, actually stopping the naming of a building after Madeleine Albright because they claim.
First of all, I don't want to hear about Madeleine Albright because Madeleine Albright is also a war criminal. Okay. But I also love how Joe is so self-righteous. He's like a professional wrong person, and yet he is so self-righteous.
Professors claim, some of the same professors that took part in the most radical elements of the protests over the past couple of weeks, called Madeleine Albright a war criminal.
She is.
And we're still waiting for the building for Foreign Service to be renamed after Madeleine Albright. Here we have first Secretary of State that's a woman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, in that case, this is how brain poisoned these people are. So he's upset because she was the first woman Secretary of State and people called her a war criminal. She is a war criminal. Oh, but she's a woman. Oh, but she's a woman. Well, I guess in that case, the fact that she's a war criminal that has probably millions of bodies and blood on her hands, but don't say anything because she's a woman, okay? This is such embarrassing imperialism, imperialist white feminist, yes, queening. Oh my gosh.
Made history, just like you made history. But you've got mainstream college students. I know, because I've talked to a lot of college students over the past year or two. They have this radicalized view.
Did it ever occur to any of you boomers in the legacy media that maybe the reason why the college students feel that way is because they actually are educated and know what's going on, and their teachers feel that way because they're teachers and educated and know what's going on? But go off.
The Middle East, a radicalized view of American public servants like yourself, Madeleine Albright, President Clinton, Joe Biden, can name Republican presidents as well. And there's this radicalization. And I just want to know.
I also would like to point out that to Joe Scarborough, Americans up and calling out genocide and looking at American imperialism and starting to connect the dots, to him, that's radicalism. To Joe Scarborough, radicalism is connecting the dots and calling out genocide. 100%, 100% scurvy, 100%. They have not talked to any college student that isn't like the daughter of Bill Ackman or some shit.
First of all, it's distressing. What do we do about it? So public servants aren't taught.
I'll tell you what we do about it. They're going to continue to crush speech. That's what they're doing about it. We did a stream about it. What, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and went over the bill? Or did do a stream with you guys about that, right? About the bill that they passed in Congress to basically ban free speech and make pretty much everything anti-Semitic and a crime. So when he's like, what do we do about it? Her answer, and all of their answer, is crush speech. That's their answer. Crush speech. Ban TikTok. Regulate Meta and other social media platforms even more than they already are. Crush college students. Kick off their student groups. Fire teachers. And crush speech by making it illegal to criticize Israel. This whole episode, this whole genocide in Gaza has really, I don't know for you guys if you feel this way, but for me, has really pulled the mask off of what an insane lie all of the international community is, all of international law and the rules-based order, and all of the so-called free speech that we have in this country. I knew our country was corrupt. I knew it wasn't really a democracy, that our country is bought and paid for by corporations and billionaires. Yeah, of course, I knew all that. But I certainly didn't know the extent of control that the Israeli lobby had over our country. That was newer to me. And how much our politicians were willing, our politicians in the US, how many of them were willing to sell out their own country for a foreign country? How many of our own politicians were willing to sell out their own country, our own values, our free speech rights on behalf of the Israeli regime? That I did not know. And this has been very illuminating. And same with the international community. What a farce international law is with everything that's come out.
That American leaders are war criminals.
True.
I mean, Joe Biden's not genocide Joe, quite the opposite. And secondly,
genocide joke.
The stupidity of the slogans that ignore all the history since 1948 about what the United States has tried to do, about what you tried to do, about what President Clinton tried to do in bringing a two-state solution about. I remember when you talked about a two-state solution and it was considered radical. They couldn't believe, oh my God, Hillary Clinton actually is talking about a two-state solution. She hates Israel. And now that.
You know what's really funny is that he just said standing up for the truth. He's trying to give her a compliment. When you were standing up for the truth, it was considered radical. You just called the students radicals. So you're giving her a compliment by saying that she was on. What he's saying is you were on the right side of history, Hill, and they called you radical. Maybe you should think about your choice of words, because you're now calling students protesting against genocide radical. Okay. So think about how that's going to age. Also, I love how smug she is. I love how Hillary Clinton is butthurt that she didn't win when, like, she's so smug and insufferable. He's sitting there kissing her ass. Because, of course, for those of you who are not in the United States, the job of the press is supposedly supposed to be to hold power accountable. But actually, it's just to give them a tongue bath. They want access to our politicians, and they want to be able to interview them, and they want to go to the same cocktail parties, and they want to hang out with each other's kids and families. So it's all about ass kissing. That's what journalists do in this country. They don't speak truth to power. They kiss their ass. So here he is kissing her ass. Just, you're so great, Hillary. Everything you and Bill Clinton did, which they didn't, by the way. And she's sitting there with her smug ass being all, told you so. I told you so. I wonder why she didn't win, you know? Maybe because literally the most insufferable person on the planet.
That's been flipped to you're a war criminal. Madeleine Albright's a war criminal. Bill Clinton's a war criminal. Joe Biden. It's disgusting. And I want you to tell us what needs to be done, what you would hope would be done, one. Number two, how do we get Madeleine Albright's name on that building? Because she's been slandered in death. She's been slandered in death. A public servant who escaped the Holocaust, gave her entire life to the United States of America, and has been slandered in death by extremists, I'm sorry, funded by Qatar. And number three, I told you we were moving past therapy session. And number three, maybe this will get on YouTube if the communist Chinese will allow it to get on YouTube. Please tell any students watching.
I'm sorry, what? Maybe this will get on YouTube if the communist Chinese let it get on YouTube. YouTube is an American-owned company. Chinese communists, these people have brain worms. Seriously, they really do. These people have brain worms. They think that YouTube is controlled by the communists. I don't know. Everybody should know their history, right? Like, we know that generally. People should know history. But this is McCarthyism 2.0. Like, I was watching a documentary about the Cold War recently, and it was so similar to what is happening now, where everything is called communism. Only this time, it's China and Russia that they're doing it with, not just Russia like it was before. Everything is Red Scare, communism, it's under the bed, it's in YouTube. I just love the idea that they have a monopoly on the media, but they think that the Chinese Communist Party is controlling YouTube. Bro, the mainstream media, the corporate media, and the Zionists have control over our media, but they think that the Chinese Communist Party has control over YouTube. Okay. And also, sorry, one more thing. When they say funded by Qatar, you notice that they never talk about all the shit that's funded by the Israeli regime. Yeah, that's convenient. That's convenient. It's funded by Qatar. Are we gonna talk about AIPAC lobbyists who fund them? No? Okay.
What President Clinton and you put together in 2000 in the Accords, you gave the Palestinians a pathway to peace, and they were scared to take it because they knew they would be slaughtered by Hamas.
Wow, I don't know where to start, Joe. But you
go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
I need help.
Well, I want to make a couple of.
Yikes! Ugh, that's so. She's like, that was like so gross. Like it was all the glad handing between them, last kissing each other. I don't know where to start because you're just so smart and on point.
Points because you raised, things that need to be vented about. First of all,
so delusional.
I had many conversations as you have had.
I know all of our media is incredibly out of touch. I know. All of our media, corporate media, mainstream media is incredibly out of touch and elitist, but I'm not sure that there is a single show on TV that is more out of touch and elitist than Morning Blow. Like the most smug and out of touch.
With a lot of young people over the last many months now. And you're right. They don't know very much at all about the history of the Middle East or frankly about history in many areas of the world, including in our own country. With respect to the Middle East, they don't know that under the bringing together of the Israelis and the Palestinians,
they don't know anything about the history of the Middle East, nor do they know anything about American history. We're talking about some of the most educated people in the world. These students going to the Ivy Leagues are some of the most educated people in the world. They know about American history, and most of them know a lot more about the Middle East and its history than most people. Maybe she doesn't want to acknowledge that they know about Middle East history because then they might find out what she did in Libya.
By my husband, the then Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, the then head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, then the Authority, Yasser Arafat. An offer was made for a state on none of the existing occupied by Palestinians, with 4% of it to reach 100% of the amount of territory that was hoped for.
That's
and
not
this
even
offer
what
was
happened.
made, and if Yasser Arafat had accepted it, would have been a Palestinian state now for about 24 years. It's one of the great tragedies of history that he was unable to say yes. My husband has a book coming out later this year, Joe, in which he talks about Arafat kept saying he intended to agree, he wanted to agree, but he was, as you rightly point out, pretty sure he'd be killed because, Sadat was killed by extremists when he made peace with Israel. Our dear Yitzhak Rabin was killed by a radical Israeli when he was pursuing the two-state solution. So this is a very important history to understand if you're going to take any kind of position with respect to what's going on right now. And there's much more that we could go into, as you say, since 1948, but I mean, you could literally go back thousands of years. The important point I want to emphasize, propaganda is not education. Propaganda on whether it's TikTok or in the classroom is actually the opposite of education. Anybody who is teaching in a university or anyone who is...
Indeed, Hillary Clinton, propaganda is not education, and is exactly what you're doing right now, ending what Morning Blow is doing right now. Because the version of what happened with the Oslo Accords that she tells is not how it happened. They always leave out the insane concessions that the Palestinians were told to make to get their state. And it wasn't even a state that was being offered. Not a state the way we think about it. That's not what they were being offered. It's just a lie in revisionist history.
Putting content on social media should be held responsible for what they include and what they exclude. And so much of what we're seeing, particularly on TikTok, about...
Is that a threat? Yeah, that's a threat. That's a threat. They should be held responsible for what they put on TikTok and what they put on in the classrooms, the teachers. You know what they're saying? I like how she's like, they should be held responsible. So she's basically saying that like we need to threaten them, that if they don't repeat our propaganda, there will be consequences for them. If they don't repeat our lies and our Western narrative and propaganda, there will be consequences for them. Absolutely insane. Rotten Ruby just followed you on Spotify. Absolutely loving it. Thank you, Rotten Ruby. Thank you. I'm working on a song right now. It takes me a little while, though, because I am not the best at technology. Yeah, held responsible, like a threat. It's amazing. Gosh.
What's going on in the Middle East is false, but it's also incredibly slanted, pro-Hamas, anti-Israel. And it is, not any place where anyone should go to get information about complex matters like what on there. We have to do a much better job.
What she says, people shouldn't go to teachers to learn about what's happening in Gaza. You got that? She's saying people should not be going to their teachers at their Ivy League schools who are actually teaching about the Palestinians to get their education. They should be going to who instead? You? A lying war criminal? Students should be... People, if they want education about what is happening in Gaza, should not go to their teachers who are teaching about it. They should go to you, a lying war criminal, and your propagandist friend, Joe Scarborough. This is insane. This is absurd. And the other thing she's saying is you shouldn't let other people who are regular people talk about what's happening. Because what do we see on TikTok? We see regular people just sharing. That's democracy. We see regular people just talking to each other and sharing. She wants that to not be allowed. She doesn't want us hearing from Palestinians that live in Gaza. She doesn't want us to hear from Arabs that live in other Arab countries in the surrounding region, and for us to hear their perspective, because that's how I learned a lot, was by listening to just regular people that lived in places like Qatar and Egypt and Jordan, and just listening to their perspectives and what life was like for them. She doesn't want that. Twitwit wrote, she's not relevant. Well, I wish that were the case, but unfortunately, she won't go away. And who is relevant in this country is who has money and power. And unfortunately, she still has money and power. So unfortunately, she won't go away. So unfortunately, she's still relevant.
In trying to, number one, teach history at all levels. That's why I love SUFs, because it's about our history. It's about history we didn't all study and learn about. But it's also important that we recognize the propaganda value of social media. People are on social media oftentimes to press an agenda, an ideological, a religious, a financial, a political, a partisan agenda. And so, of course, you don't get the facts. Of course, you don't get any kind of context. And we have to do a better job ourselves. And we certainly have to do a better job with young people in trying to help them understand how to filter and interpret the information they're giving. And I think we also need to do a better job in our classrooms, particularly at the college and university level, not to fall into, easy absolutes. You're either this or you're that. You're for, you're against. Life is too complicated. So I agree that we've got to do something to, stand against a lot of these false narratives. And with respect to my dear friend, Madeline, deserves to have anything and everything named for her.
Yes.
She lived the 20th century. She fled first from the Nazis.
Yes.
She lived the 20th. Stand against a lot of these false narratives. And with respect to my dear friend, Madeleine Albright, she deserves to have anything and everything named for her.
Yes.
She lived the 20th century. She fled first from the Nazis, and then after returning to what was Czechoslovakia with her family, she had to flee the Soviet communists. She exemplifies what freedom means.
What freedom means. Blah. Oh my gosh. And the reason why I get worried about stuff like this, because somebody wrote earlier, Hillary Clinton is irrelevant or something like that. But that's not true. We have to recognize our enemy and their power, just like we have to be able to recognize our power when we stand together collectively. When she says we have to do something about the students in the classroom and do something about social media, they mean ban it and control it. Ban it and control it. Control what you see, control what you hear. They don't want us listening to each other. They don't want us having communication with each other. They don't want someone like me to hear the perspective of a Palestinian person living in Gaza. They don't want people like me, a Western white American, to hear the perspective of somebody who is living in Egypt who fled from Palestine. Why? Because it connects us. It puts a human face to what is happening and lets a person like me understand and get educated about the experience of those people, as opposed to when I was a kid and 9/11 happened and we went into Iraq. Those were just numbers. Those were just numbers. And all I would hear was, they're terrorists, they're terrorists. They hate us because they hate us. They hate us because of our freedoms. He specifically said that. They hate us because they hate us. They hate us because of Christianity. They hate us because of our freedoms. So if you're a kid and you're propagandized by the media and you don't have social media and you can't listen to the perspectives of other people, then you are trained to not think that their voices matter or their experience. You just hear they're terrorists and they hate us because of our freedoms. And who's going to tell you otherwise, right? Who's going to tell you otherwise? If you're a white American living somewhere in the West, okay, in America, in Ohio, and you don't see an Arab person, you don't see a Palestinian person, you don't see the genocide being live streamed, and all you hear is they hate you, they're terrorists, they're Muslim radicals, they hate you because of your freedom, they hate you because you're Christian. Who's going to tell you that that's not true? If you are only in that bubble and you don't have access to real media sources, you don't have access to listen to their voices. That's what they want. That is what they want to go back to. Because when I was a kid and 9/11 happened, I was terrified of Arab and Muslim people. I was so scared of Arab and Muslim people because I didn't know any Muslim people or Arab people. And all I would see in the news and in the media and in pop culture were scary Muslim people who wanted to commit suicide bombings. That is why this matters, because it was through education, understanding, alternative media, meeting people, seeing genocide, seeing Arab and Muslim people talk in their own experience, that made me understand how much I had been lied to, and the fear-mongering and the brainwashing and the Islamophobia that I had internalized that I didn't even know that I had. So when she says we need to do something about these people, that is what she is talking about. She wants us to go back to the days where you can't get media that is not filtered through their power. That's what they want. They want to go back to the days or advance into the coming days where all the media that you see, all the social media you see, all the propaganda coming out of mainstream and corporate media that you see is coming from approved voices, is coming from approved sources. They want it filtered through Western and Israeli media and sources. That's what they want. They want it all filtered through Western imperialist Zionist sources. So that's, just know that when she says we need to do something about it, that is exactly what they mean and what they want. They want all of us to only be able to see the things that are approved by Zionists. And the reason why it matters is because they do have the power to do it. They do. Unless we stand up together and push back against them. Unless we stand up together and refuse to accept it. Refuse to accept them forcing us what we're allowed to say, what we're allowed to do, what kind of social media apps we're allowed to use, and what we're allowed to say on those social media apps. We need to stand together to remind these people that the power of the people is stronger than the people in power if we use it. That is the way. Otherwise, they will win. Otherwise, they will have the power because they have the power to shut down speech, to shut down certain voices on media, and to shut down things like TikTok. But we have the power, if we all come together collectively, to push back on that because there's more of us than there are of them.
He demonstrates what a great refuge America has been for people seeking freedom. And heaven forbid, if we don't protect this democracy, this Constitution, our values, our institutions, against false narratives, against demagogic, wannabe authoritarian leaders, shame on us. But let's not forget people who helped us get to where we are and where I hope we will always be here in this country. And Madeleine Albright was certainly one of those whom I admire greatly.
Oh my gosh, that was insufferable. That was insufferable. Oh my gosh. Right, what democracy? They're literally trying to ban speech here. Literally. All right, somebody earlier in chat. Okay, so that was that. I don't need to rant anymore about that. You guys get what I was trying to say. She's disgusting. She's a war criminal. Madeleine Albright is a war criminal. Joe Scarborough is just a mouthpiece and a propagandist for the Zionists and the Western elite. Got it. And they want to shut down our speech, and they want to make our speech illegal, and they want to make it so that we can't say, do, or act on anything unless it is first approved by them. But we are not going to accept that, okay? We are not going to accept that. None of us. None of us. Total scumbags. Yeah, we're not going to let them control what we see anymore. Nope. Yeah, the shredder. Does anybody have that? Did you see the CNN report about the concentration Palestinians? Yes, I did. And it was horrific. We can watch that if you guys want, instead of the ICJ one.
It's a place the Israeli military doesn't want us to see.